If you watched this weekend's race at Texas Motor Speedway, you already know something felt different. The energy in the air was thick, the kind of tension where you can sense something is about to snap, and sure enough, it did. Not just in one moment, but across an entire day filled with collisions, radio meltdowns, bold statements, and emotions that had clearly been bottled up for way too long. What we witnessed at Texas was not just a rough race. It was a reflection of everything that has been quietly simmering beneath the surface of this NASCAR Cup Series, and it finally came exploding out in front of everyone watching. There are two major storylines running side by side right now, and both of them matter deeply to the direction this sport is heading. The first is what happened on the track, which was pure, unfiltered chaos from the green flag to the checkered flag. The second is what is happening behind the scenes, specifically around Kyle Busch and his relationship with Childress Racing, which insiders are increasingly believing is on its last leg. When you understand both stories together, everything that happened at Texas suddenly makes complete sense. Texas Motor Speedway has always had a way of bringing out raw emotion in drivers, but this race felt different even by Texas standards. From the opening laps, you could feel that patience was short and that several drivers were already operating at the edge of their emotional limits. It was not long before things started breaking down, and the flashpoint that everyone is still talking about involved Kyle Busch and John Hunter Nemechek in the closing stages of the race. Leading into that final lap, Kyle Busch had already been racing with an edge that felt more personal than competitive. Earlier in the event, he had gotten into it with Carson Hocevar after Hocevar simply raced him hard, the kind of aggressive but legitimate racing that happens dozens of times every Sunday. But the way Busch reacted told you that something deeper was going on. He was not just frustrated with one driver or one moment. He was frustrated in general, and every single contact or challenge on track was feeding into that. When the collision with John Hunter Nemechek happened on the backstretch, there was some debate about exactly who moved first. Whether Nemechek drifted down slightly or Busch moved up is something you can argue, depending on the angle you watch it from. But what happened immediately after removed all ambiguity. Kyle Busch drove straight into him. That was not a racing incident. That was someone who had run completely out of patience and made a deliberate choice in a moment of pure frustration. The result was both cars wrecked, both drivers out of a race where they had actually shown genuine speed. The 42 and the 8 were both competitive that day, which makes the outcome even more painful to process. While all of that chaos was unfolding around him, Chase Elliott went out and quietly reminded the entire garage exactly what he is capable of. His victory at Texas was not a lucky win or a strategy-driven result. It was a dominant, confident, speed-based performance that showed a driver who is not just returning to form, but potentially returning to the very best version of himself. For those who remember what Chase Elliott looked like between 2020 and 2022, the way he drove at Texas had that same controlled aggression and consistent pace that made him nearly impossible to beat during that stretch. If this version of Chase Elliott is back, the championship picture changes dramatically. He becomes a genuine title contender, not just a playoff participant, but someone who can win races on any type of track and apply pressure to the very best. And the fans in the stands felt it too. The energy around his performance was real, and it served as a reminder that when everything else feels uncertain and chaotic, sometimes one driver rises above it all and shows everyone what focused execution. Texas also gave us one of the most memorable radio exchanges of the season, and it came from Ryan Preece. His unfiltered rant directed at Ty Gibbs was the kind of raw, emotional communication that NASCAR's broadcast team probably did not know how to handle, but that real fans absolutely loved. There was no diplomacy in what Preece said. He was done, fed up, and he said exactly what he was thinking without caring who was listening. Moments like that are significant, not just because they're entertaining, but because they tell you something real about the relationships and tensions inside that garage. The question worth asking is how many drivers are genuinely on Ty Gibbs' side right now? And from the outside looking in, the answer does not appear to be many. Gibbs has always been a polarizing figure, and incidents like what happened with Preece only add to that narrative. This is the kind of tension that does not reset after one race week. It carries over, it builds, and it creates a dynamic where every future on-track moment between those two drivers is going to carry extra weight. Then there was Christopher Bell, who made an incredibly bold statement when he described the super speedway package in the context of Daytona and Talladega. Calling that kind of racing a survival situation with serious safety concerns is not something a driver says lightly, especially not publicly. NASCAR is not going to love hearing that kind of language from one of its drivers, but it speaks to a genuine sentiment that exists inside the garage. Drivers are not just frustrated with each other. Some of them are frustrated with the product itself. And when that frustration starts becoming public, it signals that conversations need to happen at a much higher level. Now we get to the story that provides the full context for everything we saw from Kyle Busch at Texas, because his behavior on race day did not come out of nowhere. It has been building all season long, and anyone who has been paying close attention to his radio communications, his body language in interviews, and the general tone around the number 8 team has seen it coming for months. All season, Busch has been vocal on the radio about strategy calls he disagrees with and pit road execution that has not met his standard. The frustration in his voice has been unmistakable, and it goes beyond the normal level of in-race communication that all drivers engage. This sounds like a driver who has genuinely lost confidence in the people around, and that is a serious problem for any team, but especially for a 2-time Cup Series champion who is in the final chapter of his career and wants results, not patience and process. The race at Martinsville Speedway is widely considered the moment where things truly broke down between Busch and handling issues and operational mistakes during that event pushed the relationship past a point it had not previously reached, and the aftermath of Martinsville made clear that something significant had changed. Since that race, the trajectory has not improved. The number 8 team has consistently struggled to match the pace of the top competitive units, and that gap has been a constant source of tension. The team made internal adjustments, including changes on the pit box, attempting to address some of the issues that had been piling up. But even those moves did not produce the kind of meaningful turnaround that would give either side reason to feel optimistic about the path forward. The problems run deeper than a single personnel change can fix, and the people inside the garage seem to understand that. The belief among those close to the sport is strong and increasingly. This partnership between Kyle Busch and Richard Childress Racing will end after the 2026 season. That is not just casual speculation. It reflects a genuine sense inside NASCAR circles that both parties have reached a place where a separation makes more sense than trying to repair what is broken down. And if that separation does happen, the ripple effects will be enormous. Kyle Busch hitting the open market as a free agent would be one of the most significant silly season developments this sport has seen in years. He is a 2-time champion with decades of experience, a winner on virtually every type of track, and a driver who, when he has the right equipment underneath him, can still compete with anyone in the field. His name on the market would immediately become the story of the offseason, and every team with a seat to fill would have to think carefully about whether pursuing him makes sense for their program. The questions that come with that scenario are equally fascinating. Does he land at a team with genuine championship-level resources and make one final run at a title? Does he end up somewhere as a bridge driver while a team rebuilds? Does he return to a manufacturer relationship that defined his earlier career? Every possibility changes the competitive landscape in a different way, and the answer matters not just for Busch individually, but for the entire structure of the field going into the following season. Beyond just where he lands, a Kyle Busch departure from RCR would also force that organization to think seriously about its own direction. Richard Childress Racing is not a small operation, but it has struggled to consistently compete at the very highest level in recent years. And losing a driver of Busch's profile would demand a credible response in terms of who they bring in next and what direction they take the program. When you step back and look at everything together, Texas was not just a chaotic race. It was a symptom of a season that is reaching a genuine tipping point. The combination of on-track frustration, behind-the-scenes tension, public statements from drivers about the product, and major questions about team futures is creating an atmosphere where everything feels consequential and unpredictable. This is the kind of moment in a NASCAR season where the standings and the storylines start to converge in ways that are hard to separate. Chase Elliott building momentum while Kyle Busch visibly struggles. Ryan Preece and Ty Gibbs carrying real animosity into future races. Christopher Bell raising questions about safety and package design at the sport's most unpredictable tracks. None of these things exist in isolation. They are all part of the same pressure-filled environment that is making this season feel increasingly volatile. For fans, there is something genuinely compelling about a season when it reaches this kind of emotional intensity. The racing becomes about more than just points and positions. Every wheel-to-wheel battle carries the weight of whatever happened the week before and the week before. Drivers are no longer just competing for a finish. They are settling scores, proving points, and making statements about who they are and what they are capable of. But there's also a legitimate concern buried inside all of this excitement. When emotions are this elevated and frustrations are this raw, the chances of something going seriously wrong on the track increase. The incident at Texas between Busch and Nemechek resulted in 2 wrecked cars, but both drivers walked away. Not every incident at this level of emotional intensity ends that cleanly, and with tracks like Daytona and Talladega still on the schedule, the stakes of that kind of reckless decision-making become much higher. The next time these drivers climb into their cars, they will be carrying everything that happened at Texas. Kyle Busch faces a choice about how he responds, whether he channels the frustration in focused, disciplined racing, or whether the emotions continue to overflow and create more volatile situations on track. His answer to that question over the coming weeks will tell us a great deal about where his head is and what kind of ending this chapter of his career is going to have. Chase Elliott, meanwhile, enters the next stretch of the season with genuine momentum and the kind of confidence that comes from a dominant. Whether he can sustain that level of performance through the grind of the regular season and into the playoffs is the central question around his championship hopes. And every result from here forward will either reinforce or challenge the narrative that's truly back. The tension between Ryan Preece and Ty Gibbs does not disappear just because the Texas weekend is over. Those two will race near each other again. And when that happens, everyone watching will be aware of the hit. Same with Christopher Bell's comments about the Super Speedway package. That conversation is not finished. If anything, it is just beginning, and how NASCAR responds to that kind of public pushback from a driver of Bell's standing will be worth watching closely. The bottom line is that this NASCAR season has crossed into territory where calm and predictable are no longer reasonable expectations. The drivers are emotional, the stakes feel personal, the team situations are uncertain, and the competitive landscape is shifting in real time. Texas gave us a preview of what happens when all of those forces collide in a single race week. And the honest answer is that we are likely heading toward more moments just like it before this season is done. That is what makes this stretch of the schedule so important to pay attention. Because right now, NASCAR does not just feel competitive. It feels genuinely unpredictable. And in a sport where the margin between a great moment and a disaster can be measured in inches, that unpredictability is both the most exciting and the most concerning thing about where we are headed.